get it. If now Tulsi Gabbard, we got to people. I got a question here about Tulsi Gabbard.
I just saw her today. Yeah.
You against? Oh, you did. Great. You against interventionist wars. I don't know why you two aren't more aligned.
I admire a lot about Tulsi. I mean, she served our country. She supported Bernie, and she's brave. We have a great relationship.
Okay.
But look, what I have said is I disagreed with her position on Assad. And this is here's the point. I have said I'm opposed to intervention in Syria, partly because when we have intervened, we've often made matters worse. We overthrew Mossadegh. That was not didn't lead to a good outcome in Iran. With our intervention in Congo with Patrice Lumumba wasn't a success. And we supported Iraq in the war in Iran, and Iraq used chemical weapons back in the 1980s, and we turned a blind eye. We supported the Mujahideen in Afghanistan that led to the Taliban. So my view comes from a sense that American intervention has often made matters worse, hasn't protected our ideals. And it goes back to John Quincy Adams, who said, we shouldn't slay monsters. We should give our voice and our prayers to people who like peace across the world. But if we intervene, sometimes we'll be seen as a dictator and not a liberator, because we can't often pick who the true voices of freedom are. And so it comes from a restraint in foreign policy. That said, I believe that Assad has committed a lot of moral crimes. He's expelled millions of Sunnis from Syria. His father, with the Hama massacre, killed 10,000 people in cold blood. I don't think Assad is a moral actor. Now, I said I disagreed with Tulsi's trip in meeting Assad. But here's the point with the progressive community. Why can't you have intellectual dissent in terms of maybe Tulsi can have her view, I can have my view. I have a lot of respect for her. I have my position on why I think intervention is wrong. I thought part of what it means to be progressive is to encourage a diversity of thought and to respect that. And I've been very consistent and open about my position. That doesn't mean that I'm somehow against Tulsi Gabbard. It just means that I don't agree with everything she said. I agree with the ultimate view of hers, which is we shouldn't intervene in Syria. And I actually was co-sponsored a bill. I'm one of only 10 members of Congress about not giving terrorist aid in the one bill she introduced with Rand Paul.
I am loving his historical context. I'm loving his historical context. Like, he's saying stuff that most people don't know. Like, so when he's talking about U.S. intervention, when he's talking about U.S. intervention in these different countries, and he's saying, yeah, we shouldn't have, invaded the Congo, and yes, we shouldn't have invaded Iran and overthrew Iran. It's amazing that he knows all of this stuff. Now, the intervention with Iran was done more so at the behest of VP. Iran, the secular government, was making a decision that he wanted the oil resources in that particular country to go to the people of that particular country. Well, America was like, sounds like you need some freedom. Sounds like you need some freedom. In which case, they overthrew that government, put in a dictator. Eventually, that dictator was overthrown by the religious cleric that's there now, Ayatollah Khomeini. Yes, we've essentially created a situation where a dictator is now in charge of that particular country. Just because we wanted to undermine, essentially for corporate influence or corporate interests. The other one with the Mujahideen, essentially helping in Afghanistan against Russia. Yeah, helping Afghanistan against Russia. Well, that group eventually became Al-Qaeda. The weapons that we were essentially giving those guys essentially were started to use it for against Americans. It's one situation after the next. I don't remember all the cases he mentioned, but he's right. When we go into a particular country and a context, we tend to cause more problems than we tend to solve. Essentially, we tend to propagate our problems. Now, Tulsi, that's a different question. That's a different question. Now, I have two thoughts on this. I find his dialogue on this slightly comical. He's like, well, he says, in progressive circles, I thought that the whole point was to be able to have dissent and, debate. I don't know why you thought that. I don't know why you thought that. Every every context, regardless of what the context is, meaning every state, every organization, every group, paints itself in the most ideal of terms, if that makes sense. Like, so the United States will say, yes, we're the home of the free and the brave and all this other stuff. Not true, but that's what they would say. The British Empire had the white man's burden. We were carrying the world on our shoulders, giving civilization to all of these other countries. That's not what they were doing. They were raping India and raping all the other countries which they were invading. But that's not the way they saw themselves. Rome was the same way. We're doing this for civilization, the glory of Rome and all. No, they were a band of gangsters who essentially came together and created a state. It was a despotic regime of sorts. So progressives are no different in this. Conservatives say the same thing. Oh, we're the guy who believes in freedom, and we believe that in differences of opinion and all this other stuff. I don't believe that garbage. When you see the Tea Party, they're complete ideological lines. When you're looking at the primary and you're seeing those guys try to get further and further to the right, they're doing it for purity. The people who are voting in those primaries are looking for a certain level of ideological purity. Well, progressives are similar. Now, look, progressives, to some degree, this emboldened by the Stockholm Syndrome. It's like, do you remember the Tina Turner in Ike and Tina? It was like the movie that she was in. And there was a part in the show where they were in the limo, and I think he either hit her or said something about her, and she went to his ass. Like, it's the turn of the worm. It's this thing of, we've had Stockholm Syndrome for God knows how long, and we're sick of it. We're not taking the shit anymore. And you can understand that the person is going to be a little bit sensitive in dealing with any particular politician from that party, particularly when they've been screwed over by the politicians of that party. People who parroted one thing, painted themselves in a particular color, and who did the exact opposite. So yeah, you can understand people have a particular feeling about it. So yes, anything that goes against a particular point, particularly now, in this particular place, where the political realities are now with the left and the leftists. Yes, they're taking that position of purity. They're taking that position of purity. You may say they're wrong for it. And ultimately, he's not saying they're wrong for it. I'm just saying you could say they're wrong for it. But understand where it comes from. They're not necessarily wrong for taking that stance. They want a certain level of correctness. It's like, we're out of this dumpster fire. We want to start something new, and we want to start it with a certain level of correctness, with a moral, bearing to it. We don't necessarily want to go with this idea of somebody who's somewhat imperfect. So I understand where they're coming from. Problem is, it's somewhat of a false description. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard never said that Assad was a pure actor. He never said that he was a moral person or moral component. That's not what he said at all. Ultimately, her point was, leave that country to its own devices. We are sending people resources to undermine the Syrian government. That's her point. She never said Assad was this pure angelic figure of sorts. That's not where she came from at all. It was just, leave Syria to the people of Syria. Leave them to their own devices. If they want to get rid of Assad, let them get rid of Assad. They don't need us in that process. They don't need us to be there. And not just that, we don't have congressional justification or international justification to be there. Tulsi was absolutely perfectly right. She was perfectly right. So if you're talking about this difference in ideology, I don't know what you're talking about. What exactly do you think you disagree with? Because you haven't really said what you disagreed with. You just said, he's not a moral actor. That's fine, but I don't think she ever said he was a moral actor. And so that's the first point. The second point, 20 minutes ago, you were just talking about how awesome Obama was. Obama has killed thousands of civilians. Is it just because he's wearing a suit and that he's part of your particular country that you think that that's somehow less bad than what Assad did in regards to murdering all these other people, or Assad's dad, the case that you mentioned? If you're murdering people at a rate where 90% of the people that you're murdering are innocent, it didn't stop him from murdering those people. It didn't stop him from doing those drone strikes. Certainly, he full well understood that he was murdering people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made this policy of, if you're 16 years or older, you're fair game. He's being somewhat duplicitous in getting out information saying, I haven't killed that many civilians. He's lying. He's lying. He's murdered a lot of civilians. Explain to me, Khanna, where did the guy who you were you admire. Where did he get the congressional authorization to go into these other countries? You can make a strained case for Iraq. Okay, Syria, Somalia, Libya. Where is all this stuff coming from? One country after the next. He was in like 8 different countries. Where is that coming from? What authorization? We are a country of laws, are we not? If we are a country of laws, meaning the president, Congress, the things that these people are doing are based within a document, the Constitution. Ultimately, we're making an agreement to essentially give our consent to the government to govern us based on that document. That document is our pact with the government of sorts. These are our rights. These are the responsibilities to which you have in your particular office. All right. What part of that justification allowed Obama to go into those other countries? What part? Even if you want to say Obama made some argument where somehow this thing for Iraq allowed me to go into 8 other countries. Okay, how did the thing for Iraq allow you to go into 8 other countries? And pursuant to you going into those countries, if you're murdering at a rate of 90% of the strikes that you do, of the people that you're killing, if it's up that high at 90%, civilians, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, teachers, wives, husbands, children, babies. So understand what we're talking about. Are you going to be so cavalier if it was your brother that got murdered? Or if it was your uncle, or your dad, or your cousin, or your nephew? Think about your particular relative. Think about your family member. What do you think about your mom? What do you think about your dad? What do you think about these people in your life that you love and the reality to which you've constructed around yourself? What do you think about those people? Are those people important to you? Why do you believe that those people are somehow less important to them? And if you're murdering 90% of civilians, why are you okay with that when Obama is doing it? But you were angry about it, so much so that you needed to bash Tulsi Gabbard when she's pointing to Assad. I mean, when Assad is doing it. I don't understand this selectivity that you have. No, I'm not saying Assad and Obama are the same. I'm making this point that murder is murder. And no, I have no power to control Assad. I have no power whatsoever to do anything to Assad. Yes, I am going to lend my voice to bashing Obama for murdering people because he's a goddamn war criminal. In the same way that Bush was a war criminal, in the same way that Trump is a war criminal. Those people need to be dragged before the Hague. I don't understand why you're so cavalier about this. I admire the president. I disagree with his policy in Syria and everything else. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I had to go at Tulsi Gabbard. I disagree with her. Why does the left have to be so ideologically pure? I disagree with it because this guy's not a moral actor. Do you believe Obama is a moral actor? Do you believe Obama is a moral actor? Do you honestly believe that the policy that he was doing with flying killer robots, murdering thousands, understand what we're talking about, murdering thousands of people, men, women, and children. Do you honestly believe that somehow he's a moral actor? But, Assad is a horrible guy and Tulsi Gabbard shouldn't even meet with him. You're sitting here talking about you admire somebody who is a goddamn killer. Call him what he is. Call him what he is. He might be no drama Obama, he's also a killer. So if you're going to say that one killer is horrible and bad and you shouldn't be able to talk to, but this other killer that you just gave this glowing admiration to, where's your stance? Where's your moral bearing? Where's your stake in the ground in the sense of consistency? This doesn't sound consistent to me at all. I'm going to have a go at Tulsi Gabbard for having a conversation with Assad saying we need to stop supporting him and we need to stop sending resources to Syria to undermine their government. She never said he was a goddamn moral actor. So I don't know what you're talking about. I do know that Obama would get up and lie through his teeth about the number of people he's murdering. I do know that he was supporting a bill that would have undermined workers' rights and everything else. I do know that he was putting people in prison for whistleblowing on the United States murdering civilians. I do know that he tried to put somebody in prison for mass surveillance. Literally, the government is breaking the law. And he's not, angry and perturbed that the United States government is mass surveillance on everybody in this country. No. The problem is Snowden. The problem is Snowden. This is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. How are you going to... Yes, I don't like that answer. I don't like that answer. And it's not this issue of ideological purity. It's consistency is what I'm getting at. One is a killer. The other one is a killer. You can make degrees on saying, he's not as much of a killer as Assad as long as we agree to the fact that he's a killer. How are you showing admiration and praise for one killer, but you're angry that Tulsi Gabbard made the decision to go and visit another killer. It's morally inconsistent. That's all I'm saying. I don't give a shit about Obama's race. If he's a killer, he's a killer. I understand that you want to say you have some kind of feelings for the president in that sense. Fair enough. But there's a certain level of consistency associated with, yes, he's also a killer. He's murdered thousands of people, the majority of which were completely innocent. Be honest. Be honest. So, yeah, you can support him all you want, but you need to be very clear of who you're supporting. And if you're going to say Tulsi is somehow wrong for going to have a conversation with Assad, yeah, how? What is your basis for this? What are you using to base this on? She never said he was a moral actor, so take that off the table. What is your basis for disagreement with her? And how do you base that basis on disagreement with her, but okay with Obama? Is it because he's in a suit? Is it because he speaks nice? Is it because his skin color looks like yours? What is it? What is it? What makes him being a killer okay, but the other guy being a killer? No. That's a no. You can't talk to him because of that. So yeah, I give no credence to that answer at all. I give no credence to the answer at all. Yes, I love his historical context. Even the whole, the Iraq-Iran war. The United States knew that they were using chemical weapons. All of this hullabaloo, all of a sudden, of Obama putting a red line and everything else. The United States full well knew that they were using chemical weapons in that war. They didn't do anything about it. If I'm not mistaken, Reagan had communiques, or at the very least, communiques were found where the United States knew what was going on. They turned a blind eye. So, chemical weapons is all of a sudden horrible now, but at the time, chemical weapons, give it a pass. They're using it against people who don't like, so it's okay. It's okay. Yes, love his historical context. No, I don't like this bias towards certain murderers and, complete dislike for other murderers, particularly if you're going to have a go at Tulsi Gabbard, who's functioning from a level of integrity of saying we need to stop supporting people who are trying to undermine other governments. If he's being straight and say, yes, I'm against, undermining those governments. Okay, fair enough. Then what was your disagreement? What was your disagreement? You didn't answer that question. What was your disagreement? Pivoting to, can't we have a certain level of disagreement? Yes, we can. Let's get back to the question. Why do you disagree? Why do you disagree? Because that's not an answer to the question. That's a pivot. I don't understand why you disagree. Is it possible that you're functioning in the capacity of a Democrat, and because you're functioning in the capacity of a Democrat, you're towing a Democratic line? That's the question. That's the question. If you're saying, my ideology is X, fair, then the things that you do, it should come from the things that you espouse. That's just a logic thing. I believe in, I believe everybody should have health care, so I'm trying to put policies to cover everybody in health care. I believe in climate change, so I'm doing things to try to actually deal with climate change, meaning no fracking, and I'm trying to move to renewables. We're making this point that in your other things that you're saying, those other things line up with the policies that you espouse. Fair enough. Go start. Not here. Why doesn't it line up here? Why doesn't it line up here? I haven't heard anything that's your reason for being against Tulsi Gabbard on this. Yes, you don't need to be ideologically pure. I don't need you to be ideologically pure. On the things I agree with you on, I can back you. On the things I disagree with you on, I will be against you. But this is a very specific point. We're talking about a situation of war. We're talking about thousands and thousands of people dying. My bias is humanity. Now, if you're saying that you don't believe we should be intervening in these other countries, go start. Tulsi Gabbard is saying the exact same thing. So what is your issue? That she talked to the guy? You're against talking to anybody who's a bad guy? I don't understand your thing. I need a fuller answer on this. So, I get where you're coming from. Completely disagree with you. A killer is a killer is a killer. There may be different types, there may be different degrees, but ultimately, you're showing admiration for one killer early on. You're showing complete contempt for another killer, going so far as to showing contempt for people who are closely even talking to that particular killer. And contempt is a bad word for it. Or showing disagreement with somebody. And I'm saying I don't understand the reason for that disagreement. So let's keep on.